Hi guys, my name is Anton, and in this video I'm gonna cover an affordable solution to get wide angle with full frame Sony A7S. As I started to use 3-axis motorized gimbals in my work, the first question for me was what lens could I choose for gimbal shots. In my Glidecam days, I paired my camera with trusty Canon 20-watt 105 f4 lens. And also 24mm is a nice wide angle for full frame cameras, and this lens has a built-in stabilizer. Man, the thing is heavy. Even more, coupled with EOS to NEX adapter, this cannot work effectively with the gimbals, which prefer much less weight than traditional Steadicams. Moreover, Sony autofocus is reasonably well in many situations, so I decided to look for a native E-mount options. Okay, if you'd like to use your camera mainly in full frame and not APS-C mode, there aren't many Sony wide-angle lenses for now to choose from. And of course, the first one that comes into everybody's mind would be Sony 16-35 f4 lens. Razor sharp with great focal range for gimbal work and built-in stabilizer. And though it's a great piece of glass, it's not the cheapest lens in the world, and I decided to take an alternative route. What's more, I started to really like the look from fast wide-angle lenses for other types of work, especially handheld, and max aperture of f4 on 16-35 was not something that inspired me. The solution that I found for myself and that I'd like to share with you today is this combo. This whole setup cost around $700, which is a bit less than twice as cheap as 16-35. Now don't get me wrong, this is not a perfect alternative to 16-35. Not that handy focal range, no optical stabilizer, but it's quite sharp for video work, and you have ultra-wide 21mm for gimbal shots and 28mm for gimbal and many other applications with max aperture of f2. If you'd like to see the detailed analysis of this combo for photographic needs as well as image quality review, check out these amazing videos because I'd like to focus more on using them for video work, and I'll show you the pros and cons that I found so far. Okay, first I bought Sony 28mm f2.0, a nice, pretty compact and affordable piece of glass, and you get a semi-wide angle of view with it, which is wide but not extremely. What are the advantages? First, max aperture of f2.0 and a nice bokeh, so no problem shooting in low light and a good separation from background, with the look I started to like from wide lenses, as I first was pleased with fast Samyang DSLR primes. Second, nice minimum focus distance of 29mm in autofocus and 25 in manual mode, which enables me to get closer to the subject and gives the feel of real presence. Third, linear motor for silent movie recording. That means I can use my Sony continuous autofocus and face detection, which is surprisingly good news for a long-time Canon user. Of course, you cannot rely on AF every time, but as I said, it's kind of new developing universe for those who used to manual focusing all the time, and it's very helpful for gimbal shots. Fourth, dust and moisture resistant, which is always a good news, and it's pretty compact. It fits nicely in my bag, doesn't call too much attention, and helps me to shoot great 4K in any situation and still look like an ordinary tourist or passerby. And with a weight of 200 grams, it doesn't make my gimbal work too much. What about the disadvantages? First, no optical stabilization. The major cons for me. Of course, it's naive to expect optical stabilization from this price range, but it helps with smoothing steps while on a gimbal. Second, with 49mm front filter thread diameter, it's hard to find good ND filters for this lens, and it's even harder to get decent variable ND to keep your shutter speed on a sunny day. Even more, with the ultra-wide angle converter for this lens that I'll talk in a few seconds, you unfortunately can forget about ND filters at all. so I can leave my trusty heliopen on a shelf. Third, significant distortion in RAW files that could be easily corrected in Lightroom. But as video shooters, we already have our frames in video being corrected by camera processor, so it's not really a disadvantage for us. Fourth, Sony's usual focus by wire system, which can drive mad some manual focus masters, but really needs to be used to. Okay, as you can see, Sony 28mm f2.0 is a nice piece of glass of itself, both for gimbal shots as well as handheld and many other applications. Being wide enough for many situations but not too wide, it could be a great all-around fixed focal length glass. Don't forget that you also have APS-C mode and Sony's clear image zoom, which works good enough for HD, and you get a powerful tool in your hands. I traveled to Prague for a holiday this winter with 28mm and Gimbal crane, and I got many lovely shots with this combo, but I found that sometimes, especially for architecture, I want even wider focal range, so I got this used Sony SEL075UWC, which stands for ultra wide angle converter. You can get new for just $248. It weighed around 267 grams, and what this converter does is it screws onto the front of your Sony 28mm lens and makes it effective 21mm with good autofocus for video work. Okay, let's look what this conversion lens adds for our kit. Here is a shot taken with 28mm, and here is a shot with conversion lens on it. With side-by-side view, it's clear what difference it makes. Okay, my whole wide-angle setup with a camera ready to shoot weighs around 1100 grams, which is near the ideal weight for gimbal without special Canon 5D firmware update. It's easy to balance, and here's a few shots with Sony 28mm, ultra wide angle converter and giant crane gimbal. Okay, nice experience with this setup, but now let's talk about what I miss in it. First, no ability to take lens filters, at least in a traditional way. I used to wear ND when shooting in a bright sunlight to keep some natural motion blur, but convex front element of the converter makes it impossible. Well, okay, even Brandon Lee says he uses shutter speed for this, but keep in mind that there is no protection filter as well. Second, conversion lens takes one stop of your aperture. 28mm f2.0 with ultra-wide angle converter becomes 21mm f2.8. It doesn't disappoint me, as with such a wide angle, f2.8 is still pretty good. Third, the converter weighs a bit more than the lens itself and makes you rebalance the gimbal if you want to remove it. Again, not ideal, but once I put the converter onto the lens, I tend to shoot with it for some time, zooming by foot, and don't forget you have APS-C function, and if I decide to change to 28mm stain on a gimbal, I rebalance it quickly. Thanks for good encoders. Okay, as with every setup there are some strong and weak points, but I like how many options it gives me for this price range. Again, in no way humbling incredible 16 to 35, but it's a good option for those of us looking for a more affordable wide angle, autofocus, good aperture, Sony native E-mount solutions. If you like this video, please support my channel by dropping a like. I really appreciate it, and I'd like to hear from you guys what lens or maybe lenses you like for gimbal shots. Leave the comments below. Again, I've been Anton. See you next time.